in a world where things are changing, relationships are changing, the counterparty risk is changing, you need to have an asset without counterparty risk, and that is Bitcoin.
Mow predicts Bitcoin could reach $1 million, potentially even by 2026, though he acknowledges timing is uncertain. But here's the key insight. It's not about one prediction, it's about convergence. Multiple models align, stock to flow, power law, institutional adoption curves. Even figures like Michael Saylor have their own frameworks pointing to similar outcomes. Most models suggest Bitcoin hits $1 million around 2030, 2032. So the real question becomes, do you buy before that happens or after?
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
So the strategic reserve, it has mixed reviews in the Bitcoin ecosystem and community. Some people think it's a nothing burger. Like, yeah, they just did it to placate people and make us all happy. But it actually did create the reserve, and technically, government agencies cannot sell their Bitcoin now. And even more importantly, they separated the crypto into a crypto stockpile, which can be sold to buy Bitcoin. And overall, the entire structure allows for budget neutral Bitcoin accumulation too. While they haven't done anything, at least they're not selling, and the government agencies can't go rogue and sell Bitcoin. Like, in Germany, one of the states sold all of their Bitcoin. But at least there is this kind of structure in place that paves the way for more Bitcoin adoption. And it is good legislature. I think in Taiwan, they're looking to do something similar, and other places too. But it's just kind of setting the tone of what the government should be doing, which is holding the Bitcoin. And then you have other avenues like the Bitcoin Act. Cynthia Lummis tabled that to accumulate 1 million Bitcoin. And that's not budget neutral. So I think even though nothing has really happened, it is still leaps and bounds ahead of many other countries, especially given the fact that the US is in many ways a Bitcoin superpower. If you look at it, the bulk of ETFs are in the US. The bulk of custodians of Bitcoin are in the US. The bulk of corporate treasury holdings of Bitcoin is in the US. And I think the US is still the largest holder of Bitcoin. Maybe China, maybe the US, just from seized proceeds of crime and whatnot. So the US is really a Bitcoin superpower, even if they did nothing else. But they're actively working on legislation and new ways to adopt Bitcoin at a bigger scale. I think so. At least it is one of the countries where they're trying to do things, right? So they passed the Genius Act. The Clarity Act is, in various states of discussion right now, being blocked by Coinbase. But overall, the US is open for business. And I think it's far more advanced, and they have the infrastructure in place for when they need to adopt it at a national level. And this is why, for us at Jan 3, it's when we go to approach governments, we kind of say, you have a lot to do to catch up, right? So let's say Taiwan wanted to create a reserve tomorrow. How will you hold the Bitcoin? Are there custodians, and are they scaled up? Are they audited? Are they secure? What exactly is the mechanism to hold it? I don't even think that Taiwan public companies can really hold Bitcoin easily right now without some workarounds. So there's a lot of steps to go through before you can open the floodgates to a large accumulation. No one's really doing it yet, but all the dominoes are sort of lining up. So you even have central banks now that are buying, like the Czech central bank, I think, has bought. Another Eastern European central bank has bought. I can't remember the name right now, but they are starting to accumulate Bitcoin at a nation level, if not in a strategic reserve or something. And I think people will figure out, again, the problem is a lot of people misunderstand how money works. So Bitcoin is viewed as a risk asset or a tech stock. That's why we track. So when all the software companies were crashing because AI is going to replace every software company, Bitcoin came down with it. Very weird correlation. But people think Bitcoin is just a piece of software. But Bitcoin is actually a transformation of money. It's closer to gold, but it's better than gold because you can teleport it and memorize it. So it changes the entire paradigm. The way the world works right now is counterparty risk is everywhere. So for people that don't know, counterparty risk means you have to rely on another party to transfer something. In terms of gold, you can have gold as a bearer asset with no counterparty risk because you can have a physical gold coin. But that is not scalable. At a nation state level, you have, Taiwan has 424 tons of gold. You can't just take that with you easily. And a lot of countries store gold elsewhere, like Venezuela kept their gold with the Bank of England. And then famously, the Bank of England said you can't have it back when they said we want our gold back, right? And even I think many European countries, Germany included, store gold with the US. So there's counterparty risk with gold, which is, before Bitcoin, the hardest asset we had. And then you have the traditional financial system. And if you look at what happened to Russia, they were effectively debanked as a country and kicked off of SWIFT, and assets were frozen, and treasuries were frozen too. They owned a bunch of US treasuries. And now, as a country, you have to ask yourself, is that an acceptable risk? Taiwan also has treasuries too. And if you remember, I think it was last year, many countries suddenly were no longer friends with the US. Even Canada, where I'm from, we were suddenly, persona non grata. And, we're talking about annexing Canada as the 51st state. There was talk about grabbing Greenland and other things too. So I think people have grown up in a world that has been largely stable and largely very amicable and largely very friendly. Actually, I think Taiwan was on the receiving end of that too. I think Trump said, 要收保护费. You got to pay for the protection.
Yeah.
So things can change very quickly in the world. And we've seen that with Venezuela and now Iran. Things happen now. And in a world where things are changing, relationships are changing, the counterparty risk is changing, you need to have an asset without counterparty risk, and that is Bitcoin. And eventually people will come to that same conclusion, but it's difficult because Bitcoin is so revolutionary that people can't really wrap their heads around it. Because if they did, they would be buying Bitcoin and they'd be listening to podcasts and hanging on to Michael Saylor's every single word, but they're not. So this is the current state of the world we're in. People don't understand it yet, but they will, because money is a necessity. In a conflict, let's say you want to defend your borders from an aggressor, you want to buy oil. Let's say you wanted to buy oil from Russia, do they want NTD?
Not anymore.
Probably not. Are you going to give them US dollars? How are you going to give them US dollars, and where are they going to keep the US dollars? Because US dollars, they don't really exist at scale outside of the US financial system, right? Maybe a stable coin, but those are centralized and can be frozen too. So let's say in a conflict, you have no more allies that want NTD or USD. You need a neutral currency that you can pay and get oil, or drones, or aircraft, or anti-aircraft missiles, right? You need to have a money that you can spend freely and anywhere in the world to anybody.
One of the most debated developments in the Bitcoin space is the idea of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. At first glance, critics dismiss it as symbolic, a political move designed to appease Bitcoin supporters without real impact. But Mow argues that this view misses the bigger picture entirely. The key breakthrough isn't immediate buying, it's structural change. For example, government-held Bitcoin is now harder to sell arbitrarily. Agencies are restricted from going rogue and dumping large amounts. A framework exists for budget-neutral accumulation. Even more interesting is the separation between a crypto stockpile and Bitcoin reserves. This allows governments to potentially sell other digital assets to acquire more Bitcoin, a subtle but powerful shift in priorities. In simple terms, they may not be aggressively buying yet, but they've stopped selling, and they're building the infrastructure to accumulate. And that's how long-term shifts begin.
My new prediction is 1.33 million by end of 2026.
Because?
It's overdue. So the thing is, people get angry when I make predictions. Like, how come you're wrong? Like, if I was right with every prediction, then I would be a trillionaire. I'd be richer than Elon Musk. But the thing is, it's a prediction, and it is for fun, and it is also to outline an interesting phenomenon, which is I'm going to be right eventually. If you look at every single price prediction model, stock to flow, power law, we have one at Jan 3, we call it Omega 60. Saylor has a model called Bitcoin 24. They all converge in the area of 2030, 2031, maybe 2032 of Bitcoin hitting $1 million. So every single model says that. And the world is largely asleep at the wheel still. They don't understand what's happening. They don't understand the scarcity of Bitcoin. They don't understand what Bitcoin is. But let's say they did, and let's say the models are right. Wouldn't you want to front run that? Like, rationally, do you want to buy Bitcoin in 2030 for $1 million, or do you want to buy it in 2026 for 68,000? This is an unprecedented time where you have a down market or bear market, and you have a massive accumulator that's going full speed ahead with buying Bitcoin. And he's not stopping, right? This has never happened in the past before. So if you go back to my 2024 prediction of why I thought Bitcoin was going to hit $1 million, it was because of the ETFs. Every other bull run in Bitcoin history has always been disrupted or muted because exchanges were overwhelmed. I used to run an exchange too. When the price goes parabolic and people are suddenly interested in Bitcoin, you cannot onboard and KYC people fast enough. But the ETFs removed that. And it also removed the barrier to institutional adoption. So that was why I thought we would hit 1 million very quickly. Now that didn't happen, but it is very, very positive, and it is playing out to hit $1 million. So if you look at the BlackRock ETF, IBIT, it is their most successful ETF product to date on a number of metrics. Profitability, revenue generation, speed to grow to 50 some odd billion dollars, right? The rate and scale of institutional adoption piling in is just, it should have sent Bitcoin flying upwards, but it hasn't. And I think people are always wondering why it hasn't not gone parabolic. And I think it's a number of reasons. There's no one particular reason. One is people are short on cash. They're poorer now because of inflation and everything. It's not widely accepted that inflation is double digits, but I think real inflation is somewhere in double digits, if not 20%, if you depending on what you're looking at. But the other reason is also uncertainty, like all the conflict happening. And the last one is it's just people are investing in other things like AI and whatnot. So they're taking capital that would have gone into Bitcoin and investing in Nvidia or other things like that. So, there's a fourth one, which is probably more on the Bitcoin/crypto side, which is the people that believe in the 4-year cycle. They think 2025 was the peak, and now it's just down. And of course, they're selling because that's what they anticipate. So there's like all these little factors that are playing into price suppression, but definitely there's a lot of factors that are keeping Bitcoin down. But the thing you have to understand is there's not an unlimited supply of Bitcoin. If you look at stock to flow as a metric, Bitcoin is 5 times or 5.5 times more scarce than silver. And I think Bitcoin has the potential to at least do a 5x because it's more scarce. But 10x is not out of the question, and that would put us to $1 million. Yeah, like Bitcoin has taken a beating for the last 6-7 months, right? It's been 6-7 months of down. But I think it'll reverse. And usually when it reverses, it'll just reverse violently to the upside because of the supply shock. But we've never had a market like this. Like people, specifically crypto traders, like to say, well, it's really dumb, but they like to say it's going to repeat the past and we're going to have 80% drawdown. Not really. I think we've hit the bottom, and strategy buying, people like to say, oh, it doesn't do anything to the market. He's buying and it's not even moving it. But what it is setting a floor. Like he is buying aggressively at the bottoms. And you also have, basically it's packaging the strategy to now. So you can't really short strategy below 1 mNAV. It's kind of dangerous to do that. I think people realize it. So there's kind of like a double bottom. There's a Bitcoin bottom and then there's a strategy bottom, simply because of size of strategy. So I think both things will factor into Bitcoin having a supply shock where there's just no more coins. And you have more big treasury companies that will be buying soon, like Adam Back. I think you had him on. BSTR is likely going to de-SPAC in the next 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. And they have $1.5 billion of capital to deploy into Bitcoin. And at 67,000, he's getting close to $10,000 below Saylor's average price, which is now 75,000 because he's been averaging down. So I think it's just too good to be true that Adam is going to de-SPAC and buy $1.5 billion of Bitcoin for 10K cheaper than Saylor. Because that has repercussions for the next 10 years, right? That means BSTR will be averaging, their average cost will stay lower and they'll be averaging up more gradually. Whereas if Bitcoin recovers to 80K, Saylor's averaging up again, not down.
If everything is so bullish, why hasn't Bitcoin already gone parabolic? Mow outlines several reasons. 1, inflation pressure. People have less disposable income, limiting investment capacity. 2, global uncertainty. Wars and instability push investors toward caution. 3, competing narratives. Capital is flowing into AI and tech stocks instead. 4, cycle psychology. Many traders believe the traditional 4-year cycle is ending, leading them to sell early. Despite all this, one critical force remains: supply scarcity. Bitcoin's supply is fixed, and large buyers are accumulating aggressively.
Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.